Здравствуйте, дорогие друзья! Сегодня вот я нашла одного представителя города Windsor, который вам расскажет о Канаде и о Windsor. Вот. Hello, dear friends! So, my subscribers and everybody who is watching. So here I'm talking to one of my friends who have lived in Windsor almost all his life. Sometimes just traveling outside for some time and working outside of Windsor in different provinces. As far as I know, only one, so he can tell you everything about the Windsor and Canada. So, okay, so here it is. Okay, let's go. Okay, so, okay, so, please tell me about yourself so that everybody understand your relationship to Winston and why you can really relate to Winston. You have them. Well, you have the right to say the opinion, and it can be listened to by other people. Like trustworthy opinion.
So I was born in Windsor. I lived here for 24 years before I moved out of Windsor. And my parents were born in Windsor as well. But my grandparents immigrated to Canada. And that's why my parents were born in Windsor. So, and that's the big story about Canada is a lot of people's grandparents were born elsewhere. And they immigrated here. And that's why North America is North America today, because all of our grandparents moved from Europe or wherever, and they ended up settling in Canada or the United States, and then they had children, and then those children had children, and here we are. So I am one of those children, and I was born in Windsor and was raised in Windsor, and at a certain time in my life, after adulthood set in, I moved. I lived in several places in Windsor on my own as it was, but after life situations took hold, I moved to Calgary, Alberta, which is far away from Windsor, Ontario. It was a 3-day bus ride, 3 days straight from Windsor, Ontario, all the way to Calgary. And that's a far bus ride for me, even though it was still in Canada. It's far. And I lived there for 9 months, and it was different. The elevation is different because in Calgary, Alberta, there's mountains. So here in Windsor, we are in southwestern Ontario, which is the bottom part of Ontario. So Ontario is shaped like this. We are here. We are like the toilet bowl. We are in the lowest part. So we are at low elevation. When you get to Calgary, Alberta, you're in high elevation. And so I'm not used to that. And once I got there, it was different for me. It was very different. The air was different to breathe. And the people were different. And even applying for a job in Alberta was hard because they knew I was from Ontario. And they didn't accept me because they wanted other Albertans to get jobs before me from Ontario, even though we're all Canadian. So it was tough. So living in a higher elevation was tough. Living amongst people that weren't from Ontario was tough. But it was nice to see different sights because there's mountains in Alberta. And here in Windsor, Ontario, or Ontario period, there are no mountains. Nothing. We have cliffs. There are no mountains. So it was beautiful to see the mountains in Alberta, and life in Alberta was different, and it was a good 9 months, but I got really homesick. I missed my family, and I don't know, I just missed the city, and when I came home, I got off the bus, and I kissed the ground, and the rest is history. I've been home ever since.
So, I heard you telling us that the Canada and US has the common ancestry. That like we are the third. You're told that the majority of people are the third generation of somebody who came and settled in the area. But can you split the difference between Canadian and American and like two, three, four words probably, or 4 points, so that we know that Canada is very different from States. What for you, like living on the border means to be Canadian, and how can you distinguish American, right? Like right off the bat, like been here, like for example, you go shopping and you know right away that person is American.
Yeah.
How do you know?
Well, first of all, the way they say certain words, like Canadians say "a," so I'll say it's cold out, eh, or something. Or Americans will say, we say roof, like the roof of our house, and they'll say rough. So you can tell by the way they talk, their accents. But you can also tell, like, not just by the people, the society's different. Canadians are we have health. Okay, we have access to healthcare. We have we don't carry guns. Okay, so Canadians we're raised different. We're not raised to keep watching our backs all the time. In the United States, it's more or less every man for themselves. Capitalism is every man for yourself. It's survival of the fittest. Canada is capitalism, but there's also some socialist aspects to it. And we take care of each other here in Canada. So our neighbors, we don't, we lock our doors, but we trust that our neighbors are watching our backs. And I'm sure in some parts in the United States, it's the same way. Your neighbor's watching your back. But everybody's carrying a gun in the States. And here in Canada, you don't have to worry about that. So we have health care here. We have different laws than they do in the States. And I think that's how. So I'm raised in Canada versus somebody who is raised in the United States their whole life. The upbringings are different. So I'm going to turn out different than this person did in the States. Okay? And that's how you can totally tell the upbringings. They're totally different. Two different upbringings. So you can tell how once you turn into an adult, you can see how we were raised in different societies. And I think that's how you can tell.
And then another question. You told that you went to Alberta and you took a bus trip. So Alberta is quite fine. Majority of people would say I took a flight. What prompted you to take a bus instead of a flight? So what made you to make this? Was there any special reason or?
Yeah, I'm scared of airplanes.
Oh.
So I won't fly. But that's not just a Canadian thing. I'm sure there's people from Russia that are scared of airplanes. So I don't know. I'm scared of buses too, don't get me wrong. Right before I took the bus trip, there was a story on the news that some native guy cut somebody's head off on a Greyhound bus. And a month later, I took a Greyhound bus to Alberta. And in the news story, the guy was sleeping while he was getting his head cut off. So for 3 days, I wouldn't sleep on the bus. But it was better than taking an airplane, because I'm telling you, if an airplane is ever going down, I know that I shouldn't have got on that airplane. So that's why I'm not getting on an airplane anytime soon, because when it goes down, I'll be able to say, I didn't get on it.
So being in a Windsor for so many years, like what key points you can tell about the Windsor as an attractive place to live, and probably some points that will be attractive for a newcomer to Windsor. So what is good for Windsor compared to other places in Canada?
So being here in Windsor my whole life, okay, especially recently, I'm going to say the past 15 years, okay, we've had a surge, an influx, a raise in immigrants coming to Canada, but Windsor specifically. So 15 years ago, So I live in a part in Windsor, which is West Windsor. That's where we're at right now in the West End.
Mm-hmm.
And 15, 20 years ago, it was everybody who lived in the West End was from Windsor. And like my dad was raised in the West End. And my dad and all of my friends' dads were raised in West Windsor.
It's very much Canadian, West Windsor. Even
It is.
here they had excavation, I think, of the old, I don't know which.
They just had an excavation, yeah.
Indian place. So
Yeah,
it's
they
like
did.
Really a very, very old
It is.
settlement.
It is. It's a historic. It's a historic end of town, and just recently though, they started. So there's a lot of diversity here in Canada. They call it a melting pot, and it's always been a melting pot, like I said. But recently, they have been an influx of people from India. There's been an influx of people from Somalia. Just other cultures all over the place, all over the map. And they have been settling here in West Windsor. And so 15, 20 years ago, I could be walking down the street and I could see an old friend of mine from high school or from grade school. And I can say, how you been, man? And catch up. But now I don't recognize anybody because they're all from India or Somalia, So
China.
Or China, yeah, absolutely. I forgot about China.
Main populations here.
Yeah, the building we're in, actually, I think we're the only white people in this building.
No, like there are 4 whites, like
Four white people.
like I'm one Arabic, 1 British, me, and there is another 1 British. Yeah, 2 British, but
Yeah.
the kind of with disability, I think. But yeah, 4 people only.
4, and then that's out of I think there's
24 apartments.
24 apartments. I think there's more than 24 actually. Maybe, I don't know. It doesn't matter, but 4 out of 24 is still a lot. But that's the difference. And the thing is, freedom is freedom. Come to whatever country you want to live in. Live your life the way you want to live. But when you live somewhere your whole life and you're used to a certain thing, you're used to your culture, you're used to everything, and then all of a sudden people just start pouring in and your life changes. It's hard to accept. And that is the key to everybody's quarreling right now. Everybody's arguing. The differences in the division that's going on in the world right now is simply because cultures are mixing. And I'm experiencing it here myself in West Windsor. And, it is an unpleasant thing. It really is. But there's also pleasant things to it because people from India aren't all that bad. People from China aren't all that bad. People from Somalia aren't all that bad. But it's just hard when they can't relate to my music, to what I like to do, to my favorite sports. In Somalia, in India, they like cricket. Here in Canada, we love hockey. So in West Windsor, we have a hockey court. We all play hockey. But now nobody plays hockey anymore. So I go to the hockey court that I used to go to 15 years ago, and nobody's there. Nobody's there anymore because it's all filled with people from Somalia, So that's hard to take. And that's the issue I think most people are having here in the city. And not just the city, the United States, Canada, worldwide. I think that's what's going on right now, is people's cultures are being messed with, and they just don't like it. And rightfully so, really.
Well, I know that Windsor, by the Wikipedia, is the 4th most diverse city in Canada after Toronto,
Really?
Montreal, and I think Vancouver.
That's amazing.
The
I did not know
4th
that.
one is Windsor. Yeah, that's right. So do you think that people of certain cultures are segregated in certain places? Like, for example, Indians are segregated in certain places, Somali segregated, and the British is English speaking, I'm saying, do certain things together, and somehow it's just this kind of separate them because they kind of have their things they can relate to and whatever.
No,
Oh, you think that the English-speaking originally are the leftovers here and they cannot connect to each other and the kind of, they just oppose the kind of all newcomers, or what's happening actually here?
I think that, first of all, I don't believe in segregation. I believe in freedom. And part of the freedom is the culture that I was raised with is going to be tampered with. If people are free, they're free to do what they want. And therefore, nothing is set in stone. So because what I'm used to is being tampered with, and I'm not comfortable with it, I shouldn't shut out other people's freedom for that reason. So, yeah, I'm uncomfortable with it. It's tough. It's tough to take when I'm walking down the street and I can't relate to half the population in my own city anymore. That's tough to take. But at the same time, they're free people. I'm free. They're free. We're equal. We're equal people. They're not any lesser of a human being than I am. And I'm not any better of a human being than I am just because I am in my city and they're in my city. This is just as much their city as in my city, because we're on Earth. It's just as much my Earth as it is their Earth, and so we can move freely, across the city. Across the Earth. But at the same time, you got to respect the cultures that you're moving into, And with that being said, I don't think segregation would do anything but make more division in our culture.
Do you feel that, I don't know, like listening to you, I felt like the British population became the kind of, the native problem of Canada when the natives were segregated in certain resorts and everything. And it feels like that, that the old generation of English people become kind of natives, like locals and natives, and they're once again separate from the newcomers, and once again the British. But at this time, I think that the British population, English-speaking population, is still at the leading. It doesn't give up the positions.
We're the majority still.
Yeah, it's still the majority. It still don't give up the position, but still it feels like kind of a little bit moved. I don't know. Shifted from the 100% probably power to less power, just because of the numbers and all the situation that is going in Canada. So what do you think, like the last question, because we are going into kind of 20 minutes. What do you think is the future of Canada in terms of like immigration, cultural diversity, and friendship and that all?
That's a loaded question.
Whatever.
And I'll tell you why, because to predict the future of this country is very tough, because I don't know what the intentions of most people coming here are. There's a lot of hearsay. Hearsay means there's a lot of rumors, there's a lot of speculation, and rightfully so. Ever since 9/11 happened, there has been a lot of talk about our security, and in correspondence with that, a lot of there's been a huge influx of immigrants coming here, especially Muslims, and no matter who it is that come here, it's hard to trust what their intentions are. It's hard to trust governments, So, the future of Canada is the future of the world, really. Canada is a peace-loving nation. We are not the United States of America. We don't carry guns. We don't kill each other. We have issues. Yes, we do. But for the most part, we are amongst nations like Sweden, Finland, the Netherlands, Denmark. We were talking earlier. And we are one of those nations where we're just peace-loving people. And anywhere you go in Canada is a safe place. There's no question. But the future of our country is bleak. I don't mean bleak. I take that back. The future of our country is uncertain because we don't know who's coming here. We don't know the intentions of the people coming here. And the majority of them want to go to school, want to get an education. That's beautiful, you know. But they're going to leave this country and go back to their homelands or do what they do with whatever they do with their education. So to say that what I think the future of our country is a scary question because I don't know the answer to that. And if you were to ask me that 20 years ago, I'd probably have a different answer because our culture was still intact. And, you know, our society was different, you know, much different. It was a different world 20 years ago. And I'm sure I'm speaking for Canada. I'm speaking for Windsor, Ontario. I'm not speaking for Canada. I'm speaking for my city. But I'm sure that anybody watching this right now, in the city that you're in right now, can say the same thing. That your city is not the same city that it's been 20 years ago. And there's a reason for that. And I think all of us as human beings living on Earth need to ask ourselves why that is. And what is happening to humanity to make it this way. Living our lives the way we're living now compared to 20 years ago, where life was just so different, you know. So that's my answer for that.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Well, I leave my friend incognito. I think I didn't tell his name, but I'm very thankful for his perspective that he delivered to you.
My name is Brian Lebesnik, and that's my name.
Anyway, okay, subscribing, questions, anything you want to add, please add in the comment to us.